The Hidden Hamster Wheel, a bedtime story for adults. In a quaint village nestled among rolling hills and sparkling streams, there lived a young man named Thomas. To the casual observer, Thomas's life seemed perfectly ordinary. He worked diligently at the local mill, pursued various hobbies in his spare time, and lived in a modest home with his father. Yet, within Thomas's heart stirred a restlessness, a yearning for something more that had been with him since childhood. Thomas's days were filled with constant striving. He worked tirelessly at the mill, always seeking promotion and recognition. In his free time, he jumped from one interest to another, hoping that each new pursuit would be the key to unlocking the contentment he so desperately sought. He collected trinkets and possessions, thinking perhaps the next purchase would fill the void he felt inside. Yet, no matter what he achieved or acquired, it never seemed to be enough. Thomas's father, a wise old man with a twinkle in his eye and a kind smile, often observed his son with a knowing look. He had once been like Thomas, always seeking, always striving for a future that promised to be better than the present. Through years of experience, the old man had learned that the chase for happiness often led one further away from it. He watched his son with a mixture of empathy and hope, waiting for the right moment to share his hard-earned wisdom. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village was bathed in the golden light of twilight, Thomas approached his father. The day had been particularly frustrating for Thomas. He had missed out on a promotion at work, and a prized possession he had ordered had arrived damaged. These setbacks had left him feeling more empty and unfulfilled than ever. "Father," he said, his voice tinged with desperation, "I feel as though there is something missing in my life. No matter what I achieve or acquire, it never seems to be enough. I work harder, I buy more things, I chase after new experiences, but happiness always seems to be just out of reach. How do I find true happiness?" The old man smiled gently and beckoned Thomas to sit beside him on the porch of their modest home. The evening air was cool and fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers from their small garden. In the distance, the soft bleating of sheep and the gentle tinkling of cowbells created a soothing melody. "My dear son," he began, his voice warm and comforting, "I've been waiting for you to ask this question. Let me tell you a story, a tale that has been passed down through generations in our family. It's about a magical city called Euphoria and a young woman named Elara. I believe it's time for you to hear it." Thomas settled in, curious and eager to hear his father's words of wisdom. He had always respected his father's calm demeanor and seemingly unshakable contentment, even in the face of life's challenges. And so, under the canopy of stars, with the soft chirping of crickets providing a soothing background, Thomas's father began his tale. The tale of Euphoria and Elara. In a kingdom far, far away, there was a bustling city called Euphoria. The city was a marvel to behold, with towering spires that seemed to touch the clouds, bustling marketplaces filled with exotic goods from distant lands, and streets that buzzed with energy day and night. The people of Euphoria were always busy, always on the move, striving to achieve their dreams and goals. From the outside, Euphoria appeared to be a utopia, a place where dreams came true and success was within everyone's grasp. The city's motto, emblazoned on banners that fluttered from every building, read, "Happiness awaits the determined." This phrase was more than just a slogan. It was a deeply ingrained belief that shaped every aspect of life in Euphoria. The citizens of Euphoria lived by a simple creed. Happiness, peace, and fulfillment were rewards that awaited them, once they reached a certain point in their lives. And so, they worked tirelessly, each day filled with a sense of urgency and purpose. They climbed career ladders, accumulated wealth, pursued relationships, and chased after the latest trends and experiences, all in the belief that these achievements would finally bring them the happiness they sought. Among the citizens of Euphoria was a young woman named Elara. With her quick mind and determined spirit, Elara embodied everything that Euphoria valued. She was talented and ambitious, always seeking the next big achievement that would bring her happiness. From a young age, she had internalized the city's teachings, believing wholeheartedly that her worth and happiness were tied to her accomplishments. Elara's life was a whirlwind of activity. She worked long hours at a prestigious company, climbing the corporate ladder with remarkable speed. Her apartment, located in one of Euphoria's most coveted neighborhoods, was filled with the latest gadgets and luxuries, each item carefully chosen to reflect her success and taste. She maintained a grueling fitness regimen, sculpting her body to match the ideals celebrated in Euphoria's fashion magazines. Her social calendar was always full, attending the trendiest events and rubbing shoulders with the city's elite. Yet, despite all her achievements and possessions, Elara felt a gnawing emptiness inside. She was convinced that once she got the next big promotion at work, once she bought a beautiful house in the most exclusive neighborhood, once she found the perfect partner who matched her ambitions, she would finally be happy. This belief drove her relentlessly forward, always chasing the next goal, the next acquisition, the next experience that promised fulfillment. Elara's days were a blur of meetings, social engagements, and self-improvement activities. She woke before dawn each morning, starting her day with an intense workout at Euphoria's most exclusive gym. As she pushed her body to its limits, she imagined the admiration she would receive for her perfectly toned physique. After her workout, she rushed to her high-powered job at Euphoric Enterprises, where she spent hours in meetings, making presentations, and networking with influential colleagues. During her lunch breaks, Elara often found herself browsing the latest fashion and technology in Euphoria's upscale shopping district. She would purchase expensive items, feeling a momentary thrill as she imagined how these acquisitions would enhance her image and bring her closer to happiness. In the evenings, she attended social events, always dressed impeccably, engaging in witty conversation and making connections that she hoped would further her career and social standing. Despite her busy schedule and numerous accomplishments, Elara often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of her luxurious apartment, feeling an inexplicable sense of emptiness. She would mentally review her day, tallying up her achievements and planning for even greater successes tomorrow. Once I become the youngest executive in the company's history, she would think, then I'll truly be happy. One day, as Elara walked through the bustling marketplace of Euphoria, something unusual caught her eye. Amidst the frenetic energy of the crowd, she noticed an old man sitting under a gnarled oak tree at the edge of the square. What struck her was not just his presence in such an unlikely spot, but the expression on his face. He had a serene smile and an air of tranquility that seemed completely at odds with the hurried and harried faces of the people around him. Intrigued, Elara found herself drawn to the old man. As she approached, she noticed that despite his simple clothing and lack of obvious wealth, he appeared more content than anyone she had ever seen in Euphoria. It was as if he possessed a secret that had eluded the rest of the city's inhabitants. "Excuse me, sir," Elara said, her curiosity overcoming her usual reserve, "but you seem so peaceful. How do you manage to stay so calm and content in the midst of all this chaos?" The old man looked up at her, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and compassion. "Ah, my dear," he said, his voice gentle yet filled with an undercurrent of wisdom. "I have discovered the secret to true happiness. It is not in chasing after things or achievements, but in understanding the nature of our desires and the illusions we create for ourselves." Elara was puzzled by his words. They seemed to contradict everything she had been taught, everything she believed about the path to happiness. "What do you mean by illusions?" she asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. The old man gestured for her to sit beside him on the soft grass. "You seem troubled, young one," he observed. "Tell me, what is it that you seek?" Elara hesitated for a moment, then found herself pouring out her frustrations. She spoke of her tireless efforts to achieve success, her constant striving for the next big thing, and the emptiness she felt despite all her accomplishments. As she spoke, she realized that this was the first time she had ever voiced these feelings aloud. The old man listened patiently, nodding with understanding. When Elara finished, he smiled gently and said, "Let me tell you a story of a hidden hamster wheel. It might help you understand the nature of the happiness you seek." Intrigued, Elara settled in to listen, unaware that she was about to hear a tale that would change her life forever. The story of the hidden hamster wheel. In a magical forest, the old man began, his voice taking on a lyrical quality. "Not too far from here, there was a hidden hamster wheel. This wheel was no ordinary contraption. It was enchanted and invisible to the naked eye, but it had a powerful influence over those who unknowingly stepped into its trap." Elara leaned in, captivated by the old man's words. The bustling marketplace of euphoria seemed to fade away as she immersed herself in the story. The forest was home to various creatures, including a group of hamsters who lived peacefully in their burrows. These hamsters went about their days in harmony with nature, gathering food, playing in the sunlight that filtered through the leaves, and enjoying the simple pleasures of their forest home. Among these hamsters was a young and curious one named Harold. Harold was different from his fellow hamsters. While others seemed content with their daily routines, Harold always felt that there must be more to life. He dreamed of grand adventures and believed that true happiness lay somewhere beyond the boundaries of their familiar forest. Elara felt a pang of recognition. Harold's restlessness and yearning for something more sounded all too familiar to her. The old man continued, "One day, driven by his restless spirit, Harold ventured deep into the forest, drawn by a strange and compelling force. As he wandered further than he had ever gone before, the trees grew taller, the shadows deeper, and the air filled with a mystical energy. Unbeknownst to Harold, he was approaching the location of the hidden hamster wheel. As Harold pushed through a thick curtain of vines, he suddenly found himself in a small clearing. At first, it seemed unremarkable, just another patch of forest floor covered in soft moss and fallen leaves. But as Harold took a step forward, he felt something change. There was a slight resistance beneath his paws, as if he were walking on a surface that moved ever so slightly. Unaware of its true nature, Harold had stepped onto the hidden hamster wheel. First, it felt exhilarating. As he began to run, he felt a surge of excitement and purpose. The wheel responded to his movements, creating an illusion of rapid progress. Trees seemed to whiz by, and Harold felt as if he were embarking on the grand adventure he had always dreamed of. Elara found herself holding her breath, caught up in Harold's experience. She could almost feel the excitement and anticipation that Harold must have felt. The faster Harold ran, the old man said, his voice growing more intense, the more he felt a sense of achievement and excitement. He believed that he was on a path to something wonderful, something that would bring him ultimate happiness. In his mind, he saw visions of the amazing discoveries he would make, the treasures he would find, and the joy that awaited him at the end of his journey. But as days turned into weeks, Harold began to notice something strange. No matter how fast or how long he ran, he never seemed to get anywhere. The landscape around him remained frustratingly familiar. The same trees, the same rocks, the same patches of moss passed by again and again. Yet, driven by the belief that his goal was just around the corner, Harold kept running. Elara felt a chill run down her spine. The parallels between Harold's experience and her own life in Euphoria were becoming uncomfortably clear. As time went on, the old man continued, his voice now tinged with sadness. Harold felt an increasing sense of frustration and exhaustion. His legs ached, his breath came in ragged gasps, but still he pushed on. He couldn't understand why happiness seemed to be always just out of reach. Perhaps, he thought, if I just run a little faster, try a little harder, I'll finally reach my destination. Weeks turned into months, and Harold's once boundless enthusiasm began to wane. He felt trapped in an endless cycle of striving and disappointment. The joy he had initially felt had long since faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of emptiness and futility. Yet, the enchantment of the wheel was strong, and Harold found himself unable to stop running, even as his spirit grew weary. Elara felt a lump form in her throat. She could see herself in Harold, always running, always striving, yet never quite reaching the happiness she sought. The old man's voice softened as he continued. One day, as Harold was running on the wheel, lost in his thoughts of frustration and despair, he heard a gentle voice. "Harold?" the voice said, soft yet clear above the sound of his pounding paws. "Why do you keep running?" Harold looked around, startled out of his trance-like state, but saw no one. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "I am the spirit of the forest," the voice replied, warm and comforting. "I have been watching you, Harold. Day after day, month after month, you run on this wheel. Why do you continue this endless journey?" Harold's pause slowed, and for the first time in months, he came to a complete stop. As he did so, the illusion of movement faded, and he saw the clearing as it truly was, small, peaceful, and utterly still. He realized with a shock that he had never left this spot. Elara gasped softly, the revelation hitting her like a physical force. She began to see her own life in Euphoria in a new light, wondering how much of her constant motion and striving was truly bringing her closer to happiness. The old man nodded, seeing the dawning understanding in Elara's eyes. He continued, panting heavily. Harold gathered his thoughts. "I run because I believe that if I keep running, I will find happiness and fulfillment," he said, voicing the belief that had driven him for so long. "I thought that if I just tried hard enough, ran fast enough, I would reach a place of joy and contentment. But no matter how hard I try, it always seems to be just out of reach." The spirit of the forest chuckled softly, a sound like rustling leaves in a gentle breeze. "Oh, Harold," it said, its voice filled with compassion. "You are caught in the trap of the hidden hamster wheel. This wheel represents the illusions and misunderstandings that many creatures, including humans, fall into. They believe that happiness and fulfillment are somewhere out there, always just beyond their reach. But the truth is, true happiness and peace come from within. Elara felt tears welling up in her eyes. The spirit's words seemed to speak directly to her, challenging everything she had believed about happiness and success. Harold was confused by these words, the old man said. They contradicted everything he had believed, everything that had driven him for so long. But how can I find happiness within myself? He asked, his voice small and uncertain. I've always thought I needed to achieve something great, to go somewhere special, to be someone extraordinary to be truly happy. The spirit of the forest replied, its voice gentle but firm. You must understand, dear Harold, that your core states, your feelings of happiness, peace, love, and fulfillment do not come from external circumstances. They are generated from within you, from your thoughts and perceptions. The more you chase after external things, believing they will bring you happiness, the more you reinforce the illusion that happiness is out there, always just beyond your grasp. But if you stop running and look within, you will discover that you have always had the power to be happy. Elara found herself nodding, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. The spirit's words resonated deeply within her, challenging the very foundations of her beliefs about happiness and success. The old man's eyes twinkled as he saw the impact his words were having on Elara. He continued his tale, his voice soft but filled with wisdom. Harold sat still for a long moment, letting the spirit's words sink in. For the first time in months, he became aware of the world around him. The soft moss beneath his paws, the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, the warm sunlight dappling the forest floor. He realized that in his frantic pursuit of happiness, he had been blind to the simple joys that surrounded him all along. But what should I do now? Harold asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. The spirit's voice was warm and encouraging. Start by being present, Harold. Appreciate the beauty of this moment. Let go of your constant striving and allow yourself to simply be. True happiness comes not from endless pursuit, but from acceptance and gratitude for what is. Slowly, Harold stepped off the wheel. As he did so, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He took a deep breath, savoring the fresh forest air. For the first time in months, he felt truly at peace. Remember, the spirit said, the journey of life is not about reaching a destination where happiness awaits. It's about finding joy in each step along the way. With these words, the spirit's presence faded, leaving Harold alone in the clearing. But he no longer felt the restless urge to run. Instead, he felt a deep sense of contentment. He realized that the adventure he had been seeking had been within him all along. Harold made his way back to his burrow, his heart light and his mind clear. He shared his experience with his fellow hamsters, teaching them the valuable lesson he had learned. From that day forward, the forest community lived with a new understanding of happiness, finding joy in the simple pleasures of their daily lives. The old man finished his tale and looked at Elara, his eyes full of compassion. You see, my dear, he said gently, you are like Harold. You've been running on your own invisible wheel, always chasing after the next achievement, the next possession, believing that they will bring you happiness. But true contentment comes from within. Elara sat in silence, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. The story had struck a chord deep within her, forcing her to confront the emptiness she had long felt despite her many accomplishments. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man smiled warmly. "Start by being present, Elara. Take a moment to breathe, to truly see the world around you. Recognize that your worth is not determined by your achievements or possessions. Find gratitude for what you have, rather than always yearning for more. And most importantly, understand that happiness is not a destination to be reached, but a way of traveling through life." As Elara sat there, absorbing the old man's words, she felt something shift within her. The constant urgency that had driven her for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace she had never known before. She realized that she had been given a precious gift, the chance to step off her own hidden hamster wheel and discover a new way of living. From that day forward, Elara's life in Euphoria began to change. She still worked and pursued her interests, but with a new perspective. She found joy in small moments, cultivated gratitude, and learned to be content with who she was rather than constantly striving to become someone else. And as she shared her newfound wisdom with others, a quiet revolution began in Euphoria, as more and more people discovered the true path to happiness that had been within them all along.